Were the Vikings really bad people? From pillaging to throwing axes to showing utter disregard for human life, the tales of the Vikings have been treated with utmost fear and, in some cases, anguish. Portrayed as nonsensical strongmen who only knew how to wreak havoc wherever they went, Vikings are perhaps the most misunderstood race to have ever walked the planet. While most of us talk about pillaging and suffering on every path they used to tread upon, Vikings were a civilization that was as complicated and intricate in its workings as they come. So today, we're going to debunk the myth of Vikings being a cruel group of strongmen who knew only one way to Valhalla. In all honesty, Vikings were not the monsters that they have been made out to be, so we're going to look at a few of the things that these legendary people left behind for us to savor. The legacy of the Vikings. While their enemies shaped their narrative after the Viking Age came to an end, following the defeat of Harald Hardrada of Norway at the Battle of Stamford Bridge, the world as we know it might have been different without their achievements. The true legacy of the Vikings goes way beyond pillaging and war cries. Had the Vikings not ventured from Scandinavia, we could have seen a different version of medieval history, which as a consequence would have altered our way of life. Shaping the British Empire. The British Empire played a leading role in shaping the modern world, and while the British Empire would say that they did that all on their own, hate to say this, but couldn't be further from the truth. When the Vikings saw pillaging potential in Anglo-Saxon England, the English kingdoms were not on the same page. However, the Viking intervention sparked a chain of events that resulted in the unified England centuries later. The First Crusade. The kingdoms of Denmark, Sweden and Norway emerged because of the Viking Age. Once the Vikings converted to Christianity, scores of their men fought during the First Crusade and made a huge difference to Christian Europe. Setting up trading posts. At the peak of their powers, the Vikings ventured far and wide, but the purpose for these arduous journeys was never always about conquering new land. The Vikings were excellent traders and during their exploratory missions set up trading routes that helped people from all over the world connect to one another. In fact, Viking traders ventured as far as Newfoundland and even went to Baghdad. After the fall of the Roman Empire, these trade routes helped rejuvenate the European economy. Vikings and English towns. Fun fact, today millions of people are residing in towns that were once ruled by Vikings. Any place on the English map that ends in a B is actually a former Viking settlement. Towns such as Derby and Grimsby, for instance, come from Old Norse, meaning a farmstead or a village. And those towns that end in Throp mean a new village in Old Norse. But wait, that's not all of it. Towns ending in Thwaite, a meadow, and those ending in Dale, meaning a valley, originate from Old Norse. So next time you visit any of these towns, you can safely say that you spent some time in a Viking settlement. Did you know that the Vikings at times integrated themselves with the local people? They showed a lot of willingness to understand a culture that was in stark contrast to theirs. The Vikings married locals, converted from paganism, and assimilated into these societies so deeply that it instigated a linguistic evolution that has rarely been discussed. Hundreds of Norse words such as knife, gun, anger, berserk, etc. have been adopted into the English language. We all love cake, right? Well, the word actually comes from Old Norse. How about days of the week? Thankfully, the Vikings took care of a number of days of the week for us as well. Did you know that Thursday comes from Old Norse, which actually means Thorsday? Trendsetters of democracy. Now that you're convinced that the Vikings weren't savage brutes, let's step things up a little. Today, the ideals of democracy are being preached all over the world, but did you know that the first Vikings who settled in Iceland established Athling, the world's longest ruling parliament? Similarly, the Vikings created Tinvald in the Isle of Man. These democratic systems gave every subject a voice. Concepts of settling disputes by paying fines was a trend that was common in Viking culture. Everything was agreed upon mutually, rather than deciding by an alpha male wielding a huge axe. Vikings the Builders. The Viking longship was an ominous sight, with war cries and horns bellowing as axes clattered the shields. No one was safe. But the ships were the reason why the Vikings were able to travel far and beyond. Faster and lighter, these ships were designed to sustain all sorts of perils the seas could throw at them. This allowed the Vikings to beef up their supplies and travel as far as they wanted to. So there you have it, guys. While they had no empire, the Vikings made an impact on the world unlike any other civilization. They might have been seen as fierce warriors who fought for Odin's approval, but upon deeper research, it is clear that they were far more complex than that.